Greetings and salutations from Sir Squiggleton. After many years of waiting, Devil May Cry 5 is finally out, and at the time of recording this, I still don't have a copy. It was supposed to arrive on Sunday, but I don't get mail on Sundays! So naturally I can't talk about that one, so let's travel back in time to 2012, when DmC Devil May Cry was announced. To a rather controversial trailer, fans of the series did not like Dante's new look, but critics were eager to sing its praises and declare that the main franchise of Devil May Cry is dead, and this is Devil May Cry from now on. That narrative didn't sit well with fans, and up until the release in 2013, there was much contention between the two. The game garnered better reviews than any other game in the franchise, and actually is praised to this day for whatever reason. So I must ask, why? The game is serviceable and pretty competently made overall, but the combat is more shallow than any other Devil May Cry game, and the story is,
What the fuck?
I'm just gonna say problematic. So why is the game still loved and defended even to this day?
Let me just get the most uncomfortable stuff out of the way as quickly as possible. One of games journalism's favorite topics is sexism in relation to video games, but when comparing the coverage of Devil May Cry to DmC, you get a certain level of dissonance, with Devil May Cry often being called sexist, while the glaring issues in DmC are largely ignored. Delving a bit deeper into this, you see that the complaints levied against the mainline series are often visual and not based on story, usually stating that the designs of the mainline girls, Trish, Lady, and Lucia, I'm kidding, nobody cares about Lucia, are overly provocative and male-gazy, but don't talk about how capable they are. The same is true for DmC, where journalists will praise the main female characters' more modest and not conventionally attractive designs, but ignore the fact that they are prominently featured as damsels in distress for the majority of the story, or talk about that sniper rifle abortion scene. God, that feels uncomfortable to even say! The only notable source to talk about this issue is Feminist Frequency, who called the game's storyline and tones repugnant, while most outlets ignored the topic entirely. So there must have been something about the game's storyline that critics really resonated with and overshadowed these other issues. Now, much of this is speculation, because it's not like I can read the minds of dozens of journalists to get their honest opinions, but the love of DmC's storyline seems to heavily be based upon Western tastes. The game's world is very political and follows themes of anarchy and sticking it to the man, in obvious homages to Fight Club and They Live, one of which is a parody of Empire Rebellion Against the System, but that's beside the point. DmC's story takes real-world elements to criticize things that the players are familiar with, such as giant soulless conglomerates, and tries its best to make them feel smart and superior for recognizing these elements.
I clapped when I saw it!
Devil May Cry, on the other hand, creates a world with no basis in reality and encourages the player to have fun and celebrate pure video game logic. DmC's tone historically sits much better with critics and journalists than Devil May Cry's tone, which over time came to embrace camp and cheesiness. Internet critics have historically hated camp since Batman and Robin, and things have changed a little bit, but dark and edgy is still seen as the order of the day for serious media for mature adults. This hatred of all things camp is very noticeable in the leaked Ninja Theory conference footage that has aged worse than me on my current sleep schedule.
Well, imagine Dante in a Western movie, Capcom. This is the first sentence Capcom told us. We tried.
So, you have a developer who sets a tone that encapsulates a love for Dante, the dark, brooding, oversexed, fuck-loving anarchist, and encapsulates disdain for Dante, the wacky woohoo asexual pizza cowboy, and a gaming press that feels the same way. But all of that is just dressing for the gameplay. Devil May Cry and DmC's gameplay is similar only at face value. Sure, there's combos, rankings, and a variety of enemies to style on in both, but Devil May Cry's gameplay progression and appeal is based more upon giving the player large amounts of options to choose from, and a combat system that has suggestions for how you're supposed to play, but leaves itself open for experimentation, where looking as cool as possible requires a fair level of practice with mechanics, and sports a depth that requires many players to play through the game multiple times to fully grasp all of said mechanics. DmC's combat is based more upon giving the player a clear path to looking as cool as possible, with minimal experimentation. Starting with a weapon usually gives you access to pretty much all the tools you'll need to get a triple S rank in 2 combos. Now, games journalists play a lot of games and generally exist as the living embodiment of the phrase, jack of all trades, master of none, as they have to be sufficiently skilled in every genre. At least in theory. Since their job is to play a variety of games, many don't have the time or patience to practice a single game for very long, so games with a high skill ceiling and depth tend to review much worse than games that focus more on spectacle. God Hand being one of the most infamous cases of a game absolutely lambasted by critics who couldn't appreciate its overly deep mechanics. But back to spectacle. Devil May Cry is a series with a large focus on functional combat arenas where Dante and Nero are the coolest thing in the room at any given time. The gameplay progression is enter a room, style on baddies, maybe solve a puzzle, and often backtrack to allow the reuse of assets so the player can style on baddies in new ways. Backtracking is a common complaint levied against the mainline series, and it's understandable. The focus is on the combat, and the spectacle comes from the enemies and what the player does to them. DmC's focus is on showing the player new stuff all the time, what you do versus what you see. Historically, critics love set pieces, and DmC is chock full of them, with its gameplay progression being enter an area, style on baddies, grapple hook to a new area, and look at cool background stuff while styling on more baddies with minimal backtracking. Constant use of new assets is a staple of Western AAA games, and is always reviewed well, since it makes the game feel wider, but not necessarily make the game deep. The difference in spectacle is debatably the largest point of contention between fans and critics, since fans of Devil May Cry games will repeatedly play the game to do new stuff, while critics will play the game once to see new stuff. A journalist's job is to inform the uninformed public about something and try and give their opinions in an objective manner. Critics and journalists undeniably have biases, but their target audience will always be people who know nothing about a particular thing. Fans, on the other hand, know everything about a particular thing and will always correct any inaccuracies in statements made by journalists, or anyone else for that matter, including the creators of the thing in question.
In the beta, it's Kurdrin, Wildhammer, and Falstad is not in the game at all. What happened to him?
Isn't Falstad dead? From Day of the Dragon? No?
No, he survived, and in fact, he was the leader of Airy Peak in Vanilla WoW through Wrath of the Lich King.
Right, of course. Right. Yeah, Alex, what's up with that?
Journalists hate hearing that something they said about a series is wrong because information presented in a previous entry in that series contradicts their statements. Because of this juxtaposition with their target audience, journalists usually despise fans. Disgusting fans! How dare they enjoy a thing! So DmC's often dismissive attitude towards hardcore fans of Devil May Cry resonated with critics. It made itself known as a completely separate entity with almost no ties to the main series, which journalists and critics loved since it meant there was no prior material required to appreciate or even understand the game. It was a fresh start and it hated the same things that they hated, so naturally they felt they had an ally in DmC, because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So when the game released, the journalists almost universally praised it. It was full of themes that resonated with them and opinions they agreed with, so naturally they would overlook some of the more troubling aspects and look back on it fondly even today in spite of hindsight. So in closing, DmC Devil May Cry found its audience not in people who play games, but more with people who talk about games. And that's really all you can say on the subject. It definitely aimed for an audience and hit that audience, which, funny enough, didn't really buy games, so it was one of the least successful games in the franchise, which led to Capcom saying, well, I guess we're just gonna go the other way and deboot the entire series back to what it was. So, recording this video was a lot of fun. I think I want to do more videos like this in the future. So, I'm just going to tell you to do the usual thing of like, share, and subscribe. I hate saying that. Maybe I'll get used to it. But I have a Twitter now, so follow me at Sir Squiggleton for any updates, and I hope that I'll see you in the future with videos like this, or maybe some dumb videos that require way less effort. See you guys.